The entire room gasped as the 78-year-old woman in faded sweatpants and a simple gray t-shirt stepped onto the shining mat. The famous karate champion, Jake Morris, didn't even try to hide his laughter. "Grandma, I think you're lost. Bingo night is down the hall," he said loudly into the microphone. The crowd burst into laughter. Martha Wilson didn't respond. She simply tightened her white belt, the one they had tossed at her earlier, with smirks and whispers. Her weathered hands moved with steady precision as she took her position on the mat. No one knew she had once been one of the most feared martial arts masters in Asia before she disappeared from public view 50 years ago. They were about to find out. Jake bounced around the mat, showing off for the cameras that lined Elite Dragon Dojo's walls. His black belt gleamed under the expensive lighting system. His custom GI carried 5 sponsor logos. His Instagram followers were watching live. Martha stood still, her breathing calm, her eyes focused. When the bell rang, Jake charged forward with his signature spinning kick, the move that had earned him 3 national titles and millions of views online. Martha didn't flinch. She didn't dodge. Instead, she stepped slightly to the left, caught his leg with one hand, and with the other, delivered a single palm strike to his chest. Jake Morris, the undefeated champion, dropped to the mat like a stone. The live stream cut to black. The crowd went silent. And Martha Wilson simply walked away, leaving behind a room full of people who would never underestimate an old woman again. Elite Dragon Dojo wasn't really a traditional dojo at all. It was more like a TV studio with mats. The walls were covered with giant screens displaying fight statistics and social media accounts. Cameras hung from the ceiling, capturing every angle. The instructors wore microphones. Even the changing rooms had good lighting for selfies. The owner, Tyler Reed, had built his fortune turning martial arts into entertainment. His fighters didn't just train, they performed. They didn't have students, they had followers. And Jake Morris was his biggest star. At 28, Jake had never lost a match. His kicks were fast, his punches were strong, but his real talent was for the camera. He knew how to make each move look good on video. He knew when to smile, when to shout, when to pose. His fights weren't just wins, they were content. Every month, Elite Dragon hosted an open challenge event. Anyone could sign up to fight against the dojo's champions. These matches weren't really about finding new talent. They were about giving the stars easy wins that looked good on camera. "We need someone special for Jake's match today," Tyler told his assistant that morning. "Someone who makes him look good." "We've got a walk-in," the assistant replied, checking the sign-up sheet. "Old lady. Signed up last. No experience listed." Tyler grinned. "Perfect. Put her against Jake for the final match. The fans will love it." Martha Wilson had arrived at Elite Dragon Dojo carrying only a small cloth bag. The front desk staff barely looked up when she signed the form. They just pointed her toward the waiting area without explanation. "Name?" one of them finally asked. "Martha Wilson," she replied quietly. The young man didn't bother to check if he'd spelled it correctly on the form. He just wrote M. Wilson and stuck the paper at the bottom of the pile. Martha wore simple clothes, gray sweatpants that had faded from many washes, a plain t-shirt and flat shoes with worn soles. Her silver hair was tied back in a neat bun. She carried herself with perfect posture, but no one noticed. "Check out Grandma," one of the younger fighters whispered loudly to his friends. "She's gonna get destroyed. Probably thinks this is chair yoga or something," another added, and they all laughed. Martha found a quiet corner and sat down on a bench. She didn't warm up like the other fighters. She simply sat still, eyes closed, breathing steady. A passing instructor glanced at her and shook his head. "Not even trying," he muttered to a colleague. "Just here for attention probably." The morning passed with matches that felt more like performances. Young fighters with perfect hair and matching gear took turns showing off flashy moves. The audience cheered on cue. Cameras followed every kick and punch. Martha watched it all without comment. When a staff member roughly handed her a white belt, she accepted it with a small nod. The belt was frayed at the edges, the one they kept for visitors who wouldn't be coming back. "You're up last," the staff member said, already walking away. "Against Jake." The big screens around the dojo displayed the day's lineup. At the bottom was M. Wilson versus Jake Morris, with a flashing final match banner. Jake's photo showed him mid-kick, smiling for the camera. Martha's space was empty except for the words "Walk-in Challenger." "This'll be quick," someone in the crowd said. "Jake's gonna destroy her," another replied. "Hope she signed the waiver." The comment section on the live stream filled with laughing emojis and jokes about retirement homes. No one was there to see a real fight. They were there to be entertained. They were there to see Jake win. As the final match approached, Jake warmed up in the center of the dojo, making sure everyone could see him. He punched the air, did a few high kicks, and posed for photos with fans. "Who am I fighting?" he asked Tyler. Tyler pointed at Martha, who was quietly tying her white belt in the corner. Jake laughed. "Seriously? That's the best you could find." "Trust me," Tyler said. "The internet will love this. Just put on a good show before you take her down." Jake nodded and grabbed a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the crowd and cameras, "for our final match today I'll be facing, He pretended to check the board. "Wilson. Come on up, Em." The crowd turned to look as Martha slowly made her way to the mat. Some people took out their phones to record. Others whispered to each other, already laughing. "Grandma, I think you're lost," Jake said into the microphone as Martha stepped onto the mat. "Bingo night is down the hall." The crowd roared with laughter. Someone shouted, "Go easy on her, Jake." Another yelled, "Don't break a hip, lady." Martha said nothing. She simply took her position and bowed, her movements precise and controlled. Jake bowed quickly, barely lowering his head, then immediately started bouncing around, showing off for the cameras. He threw a few punches in the air, just missing Martha's face, trying to make her flinch. "She didn't? Not even scared, huh?" Jake said. "Maybe you don't understand what's happening here." He threw a fake kick that stopped just short of her shoulder. Still Martha didn't move. The referee called them to the center. "Clean fight," he said, though everyone knew the result was already decided. "Begin." Jake immediately started circling Martha, throwing quick jabs that weren't meant to hit her, just to make her back up, to make her look confused for the cameras. But Martha simply pivoted, always facing him, her stance solid. "Come on, Grandma," Jake taunted. "At least try to fight back." The crowd was getting restless. They had expected Martha to be running away by now, maybe even crying. Instead, she stood calm, watching Jake's every move like she was studying him. Jake decided to end it. He stepped back, preparing for his signature move, a spinning kick that had become his trademark. The crowd recognized the stance and began to cheer before he even moved. "Here it comes," the announcer shouted over the speakers. "The Morris Tornado." Jake spun, his leg extended in a perfect arc that would normally catch an opponent in the chest or head. He had performed this kick hundreds of times. It always connected. It always looked perfect on camera. But this time something different happened. As Jake's foot approached, Martha didn't duck or stumble backward like his usual opponents. Instead, she stepped slightly to the left, her movement so small that most people missed it. Her left hand caught Jake's leg just above the ankle, not gripping tightly but simply redirecting its path. At the same time, her right hand came forward in a simple palm strike to the center of Jake's chest. There was no dramatic wind-up, no shout, no visible effort. Just a straight, precise push with an open palm. And Jake Morris, the undefeated champion, simply collapsed. His spin stopped mid-rotation. His body crumpled, folding inward before hitting the mat with a dull thud. He didn't get up. The dojo went completely silent. The camera operators looked at each other in confusion. The livestream comment section stopped scrolling for a full 10 seconds. Then people started whispering. What just happened? Did she actually hit him? Is he faking? But Jake wasn't faking. He lay on the mat, conscious but unable to move, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The medical team rushed forward, but Martha stopped them with a small gesture. "He's fine," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "Just winded. Give him a minute." It was the first time she had spoken since arriving, and something in her tone made everyone listen. The medical team stepped back. The crowd waited in silence. After exactly 60 seconds, Jake took a deep breath and slowly sat up. His face was pale, his confident smile gone. He looked at Martha with wide eyes. "How did you?" He began but couldn't finish. Martha bowed to him, a proper, respectful bow. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. "Wait," Tyler called, rushing onto the mat. "You can't just leave. Who are you?" Martha paused at the edge of the mat. For a moment, it seemed she might ignore the question. Then she turned back. 50 years ago, she said, her voice carrying in the silent room, "I was Martha Chen, student of Master Li in Hong Kong." A gasp went through the crowd. Even those who didn't know martial arts history recognized that something important had just been revealed. One of the older instructors stepped forward, his face shocked. Martha Chen disappeared after winning the Pan-Asian Championships in 1975. She was considered one of the greatest martial artists of her generation. Martha nodded slightly. "I didn't disappear. I just stopped competing. Some things are more important than fame. Why come here today? Tyler asked, suddenly aware that he had stumbled onto something much bigger than a viral video opportunity. Martha looked around the dojo at the cameras, the screens, the sponsors' logos. I saw your advertisements, she said simply. You claim to teach real martial arts. I wanted to see if that was true. With that, she untied her white belt and folded it neatly. She placed it on the bench, picked up her small bag and walked out of Elite Dragon Dojo. The room remained silent long after the door closed behind her. The video of Martha dropping Jake with one move spread across the internet faster than Tyler could contain it. Despite his efforts to delete the official footage, dozens of spectators had recorded it on their phones. By nightfall, it had been viewed millions of times. Comments ranged from disbelief to awe. Did that really happen? No special effects. That's the legendary Martha Chen. My master used to tell stories about her. One palm strike, no wasted movement. That's real martial arts. Jake didn't post anything on social media for a week. When he finally returned to Instagram, his profile had changed. Gone were the posed photos and flashy merchandise. Instead, he posted a simple message. I've been teaching martial arts for years, but yesterday I became a student again. I have much to learn. Elite Dragon Dojo changed too. Tyler removed half the cameras. The giant screens came down. The instructors stopped wearing microphones. And a new class appeared on the schedule, Foundations of Movement, instructor unnamed. The first session was packed with students expecting to see Martha. Instead, Jake himself walked in, now wearing a plain white GI with no sponsor logos. Martha Wilson won't be teaching here, he announced to the disappointed crowd. But she taught me something important yesterday. Martial arts isn't about looking good on camera. It's about discipline, respect, and perfect technique. That's what we're going to focus on from now on. As for Martha, she returned to her quiet life in a small apartment across town. She still practiced her forms every morning in the park, moving with the same precision that had shocked everyone at Elite Dragon. Sometimes people recognized her and asked for training. Most she turned away. But occasionally, if someone approached with genuine respect and humility, she would nod and say, "Watch first. Then we'll see." She never spoke about that day at Elite Dragon Dojo. She didn't need to. In martial arts, the most important lessons often come without words, through action, through example, through one perfect move that changes everything. The unassuming 78-year-old woman who had been mocked and underestimated had delivered more than just a palm strike. She had delivered a reminder that true power doesn't need spotlights, that wisdom doesn't fade with age, and that sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones most worth listening to. And somewhere across town, Jake Morris was learning to fall properly, to begin again as a beginner, and to find the strength that comes from humility, all because he had made the mistake of laughing at an old woman in simple clothes who knew exactly who she was.